Hello, everyone. My name is Vineha wadgaonkar. And I'm here to analyze the MHCT 5-year exam, which was conducted today in the morning session. So the first slot for MHCT has been conducted already. And let's understand that since the CT cell has this year changed the total number of marks. Earlier it was 150, they made it 120 for this year. So let's see how this particular exam or this particular paper in this slot was. As I have introduced myself, my name is Vineha. I am here through Get Set Law IMS. And yeah, let's get into the details, how the exam was, how the question set was, what was the level of difficulty of this particular exam, this paper, this particular slot, what kind of questions went into each sections individually, and were there any different level of questions, different type of questions which were introduced in any section. So that is it. So this is the first take for the first slot of MHCT 5-year 2025. And here are a few highlights of MHCT 2025 law for 5-year LLB. Um, Now, starting the first thing about the cutoff. How should we be expecting the cutoff for the first slot of MHCT 5-year LLB? Since the entire paper can be marked as easy to moderate, the level of difficulty of this particular slot for 5-year MHCT for 2025, the year 2025, it has to be or it should be marked basis the reviews, basis the comments, basis the responses given by various students. It can be understood as an easy to moderate paper. So we can expect a higher cutoff this year for MHCT 5-year LLB since various sections had multiple questions, but they were also only on easy to moderate level. As far as so we all know that MHCT 5-year LLB consists of 5 sections, which consists of legal, logical reasoning, English, general knowledge, and maths. Here is accumulated highlight or look about how did the paper look like. So legal reasoning section, as expected, consisted of few principal fact-based questions. There were assertion reasoning questions based on the legal theory, the concept, which we also call as concept-based questions. Uh, Quite a lot of questions were also based on static legal GK. However, there were two new types of questions asked in the first slot as witnessed by the students. That is similar to the other law entrance examination. MHCET 5-year LLB this year also had passage-based questions. And there were two caselets, legal caselets questions also. We look into the details of how did these questions look like and what was the level of difficulty of these questions. So your legal section for MHCT 5-year LLB, the first slot, it was a combination, legal reasoning section was a combination of principal fact-based questions, passage-based questions, legal caselets, assertion reasoning, and little bit of static legal GK questions. The second section was logical reasoning section, which included questions based on the topic of blood relations. Lot of questions were based on coding decoding. There were questions also asked on analogy. Odd man out questions were also seen, and direction sense questions were majorly asked in the logical reasoning section. English language section um, consisted of RCs, that is passive based questions. There were individual questions, grammar based questions. So When I say individual grammar based question, it meant that the passage based questions included certain grammar based questions also, but they were contextually based on the passages asked. However, there were, apart from the passages, there were few grammar based questions also asked. Then the English reasoning section also consisted of questions based on the topic of idioms and phrases. There was one question based on word jumbles, then spelling corrections and fill in the blanks. Your general knowledge section for this year's MHCET 5-year LLB focused on history, geography, polity, and the topic of awards and achievements. Maths, on the other hand, consisted of questions based on topics like ratio, profit and loss, Roman numericals, and pipes and systems. So this is how the entire exam looked like. And again, the level of difficulty of this particular paper could be marked as easy to moderate. Now let's understand section wise that how did the individual section look like? How was it? What was the level of difficulty of each section for MHCT 5-year LLB 2025? Going with the first section as legal section, the total number of questions that were asked was 32. Level of difficulty of this section can be marked as easy to moderate, particularly as I've already mentioned, there was a new aspect that was seen, that was witnessed for this section. So apart from the generally asked principle based question and legal knowledge based questions, there were two passage based questions asked. These passages were particularly based on contract law. um, there was another passage which was based on the constitutional law, particularly dealing with the topic of right to privacy and right to education under Article 21A. And there was also another passage, very small passage asked based on euthanasia, again, revolving around the constitutional law and dealing with Article 21. The other new aspect, which was introduced in legal reasoning section for this year's MHCT 2025 5-year LLB paper, was that there were few legal caselet questions. Now, the legal caselet questions were asked in the form of an incident being stated there, as in similar to how a fact or a factual situation is placed in the principle based questions. There were four options accompanied by this particular incident, and those options were speaking of a appropriate legal recourse that could be taken for that incident that has happened. So this was another new aspect that was introduced in this year's legal reasoning section for MHCT 5-year LLB, which we commonly refer to as legal caselet questions. Another new aspect is, apart from these questions being asked in English or logical reasoning section, there were few cause and effect questions also asked for legal reasoning section. Example, there was a question which stated the cause as Supreme Court declaring a law as unconstitutional, and the other statement was given as the legislature had to repeal this particular law for public welfare. And there were four options asking whether which of the two statements is the cause and which is the effect out of the two. So this kind of question was another new element which was asked in the legal reasoning section, apart from the generally asked questions. And another aspect apart from these three new aspects was the course of action question, that a particular factual situation was taken and which is the correct course of action, legally appropriate course of action. So these are the four new aspects introduced in this year's legal reasoning section for 5-year LLB MHCT. That is, passage based questions were asked. There were few legal caselet questions were asked. Cause and effect question, course and action questions were added apart from the generally asked questions. Dealing with the section particularly, so apart from the new aspects, the entire legal reasoning section was majorly dominated by international law-based questions, constitutional law-based question, and tort law-based question. So the entire legal reasoning legal reasoning section witnessed more questions based on these three topics, and the other laws or the other topics, that is contract law or criminal law, were added as a part for the static legal GK. So the caselets were based on constitutional laws, the passages were based on constitutional law. There was a legal caselet which was based on torts, and specifically torts of negligence. So somebody who had already gone through the Union Carbide case, that is the Bhopal gas tragedy case, which is generally referred to as, that was in a different language was asked in the form of a caselet, and appropriate legal course of action was to be chosen out of the four options given. The static legal GK questions for this section consisted the questions basis Article 17, that which of the following article uh, has speaks of invoking or revoking untouchability. Fill in the blanks based on fundamental right. Another questions was asked on who is the head of Republic of India. Another assertion reasoning question was asked uh, based on contract law, that assertion stated as all contracts are agreements, and reason um, there was a true or false question asked based on contract law, that one statement called as all contracts are called as agreements, and the other statement was called as all agreements are called as contracts. So out of the two statements, which of the statement could be marked as true, was another static legal GK which was asked. Question was asked. Then another static legal GK question based on theft was asked. Um, one more question based on constitutional law was asked as which of the following option can be understood as the supreme law of India. So, in all, if we look at this particular section, this section was a combination of majority of questions were being asked from three topics, that is international law, constitutional law, and tort law. However, the other part of the section consisted of static legal GK questions, which was again a combination of contract law, criminal law, and again a little bit of constitutional law. So the topics like family law or niche criminal law was not a part of this year's legal reasoning section for MAH-CET 5-year LLB. Moving on to the next section, that is English. How did the English section look like for the first slot of MAH-CET 5-year LLB? The total number of questions that were asked in this section was 24. Understanding the level of difficulty of this section could be marked as easy, since there were only two passage-based questions asked. Only two passages were included in this section, as well as these questions which were based on these two passages were mostly direct questions. There wasn't any inference-based question or summary-based question or tone-based question for that matter. Each passage consisted of three questions, out of which two were the direct questions, and one question was either the grammatical substitution. Say a particular line was given from the passage, and the four options stated that which of the following best substitutes the underlined part for the sentence in the passage. So the passage based questions can also be understood to have been very easy, which could have been very easily spotted in the passages. So there was no indirect question asked based on these passages, but only direct questions, making the passages to be solved at a very, very easy level. Apart from the passage-based questions, the other number of questions included questions based on idioms and phrases. Grammar. Grammar-based questions were only on three topics, that is degree of adjectives, articles, And tense specifically, the question based on tense, the topic tense specifically spoke only about the subtopic of past significant. So the grammar based questions were also pretty easy, and they could have been easily solved. Apart from passage based and grammar based question, the remaining questions for this sections were asked on the topic of sentence jumbles, spelling error. Specifically, there was only one question asked on this topic called as spelling error, and the aspirant had to choose the correct spelling of the word prosecution. So you can understand that the level of the question asked on this particular topic is as simple as identifying the correct spelling for the word prosecution. Error spotting question was also seen to be a part of this section. Another question was asked for the topic called as antonym. The word praise was the principal word, and the antonym of this particular word was asked. Again, yet another easy question was to be seen to be a part of English section. The remaining question were based on vocabulary and one word substitution. So one word substitution, or one word answer was particularly based on any person who has already occupied a particular office but is no more occupying the office. What would that person be called? Whether he would be called as an heir or a successor or a predecessor, or none of the above. So looking at the types of question and culmination of question, English section for this year's MHCT 2025 for 5-year LLB, the first slot can be understood as a very easy section. And have you if have the student has had a correct amount of practice, this section would have been very easy for the student to solve. Moving ahead to the next section, which is the GK section. This section is often understood to be one of the most troublesome section to for all the students who are appearing for any competitive examination, let alone MHCET. But as far as MHCET for LLB is concerned, GK section can also be understood as a little bit of more troublesome, because the majority of questions that are asked for these sections, for this section, are based on static GK, which makes the ambit for the preparation for this section as very huge. And something like this, some similar like this was seen for this section for this year's 5-year LLB MHCET. Total number of questions asked for this year's MHCET 5-year LLB GK section was 24. Even if the section was majorly dominated by the static GK part, even then, the section can still be understood. The level of difficulty of this section can be understood as easy, because majority of the questions that were asked for this section were covering ancient history, Indian geography, economics, and polity. Question like, which of the following river originates from the Amarkantak Plateau? Um, s- so, which the part where the Thar Desert extend to Pakistan is called as what? Um, then as far as economics is concerned, Amartya Sen can be understood as which of the following: was he a philosophist? Was he an economist? Was he a scientist? And etc. Another question which was based on ancient history was, who was the founder of Jainism? Was it Gautam Buddha? Was it Mahavir? And etc. Um, Apart from history, Indian geography, economics, and polity, majority of questions were based on polity part of GK. That who was the chairman of the Constituent Assembly? Was it Dr. Rajendra Prasad, Baba Sahib Ambedkar? And there were two other options. D.Y. Chandrachud was which? So was he the 50th CJI of India, 51st, 22nd, or 34th? Um, for Legislative Council of Maharashtra, the governor can appoint how many members, were kind of questions which was seen to be based on polity for GK section. Um, Couple of questions were also seen to be based on current affairs. That is, this year's or the Summer Olympics was for 2024 was conducted by which of the following, whether it was Japan, France, USA, and so on and so forth. As generally, static GK is understood as one of the most important part to be the for the preparation for GK section. However, current affairs can also be understood to be a part of preparation. But along with history, polity, economics, and geography, books and authors and awards and achievements have also been a important part for this particular section, and there were two such questions witnessed for this section. One is that which of the following won the Padma Shri award for the year 2024, and who won the Man Booker award for the book The God of Small Things for the year 2024. So looking at this section, even if the section was majorly dominated by the static GK part, it still can be understood on the part of the level of difficulty was on the part of easier level. It cannot be something which is on a difficult side. So looking at the three section, that is legal, English, and GK, so far so the exam looks pretty easy and pretty solvable for those who've had considerable amount of preparation. Moving ahead with the next section, that is logical reasoning. Now, basis the reviews and the comments from various students, unlike other three section, logical reasoning section for this year's MHCET 5-year LLB exam was seen to be on the level of easy to moderate. If it was to be ranked for the level of difficulty, it was easy to moderate. Total number of questions that were asked in this section this year was 32. um, Almost 4 to 5 questions were based on two topics, that is blood relations and decoding respectively, meaning the section could be seen to have dominated majorly with two topics, that is blood relations and coding and decoding. So coding and decoding had various types of questions. So coding, decoding based on alien language, or coding decoding based on um, words. So the section was majorly dominated by these two questions. Apart from this, there were two to three questions seen based on syllogisms and logical consistency. Analogy and odd man out was also seen to be a part or basis which questions were asked in this particular section. Direction sense, calendar, statement assumption, again, cause and effect were also few of the topics where logical reasoning section included questions from. So, looking at the topics and looking at the number of questions based on major topics here, this section, in comparison to the other section, was seen to be on the level of easy to moderate. Next section is maths, and we all know math section is already not a very light section. It's a lot of students, a lot of MHCT 5-year LLB students find this section as a little scary part of their preparation. However, only eight number of questions were asked for this section, as well as the level of difficulty of this section was also pretty easy, since the questions were based on very basic topics, that is ratio proportion, profit and loss. The only one question out of the eight which could have been a little troublesome for the exam takers could have been the question based on pipes and systems, but other topics were pretty easy, and they were pretty elementary in nature. So they were pretty solvable. They were easily solvable questions were based on percentage, time, speed, distance. Also, there was one theory-based question that was asked, which is not very usually seen for any exam, including math section. The question was based on Roman numericals theory, that which of the following correctly expresses the number 100 in the Roman numerical understanding. So math section can be understood as one of the easiest section amongst all the other sections here. And if the exam taker has had prepared for even basic arithmetic part of quantitative aptitude or math section, 8 marks are can be understood as a short kitty to score this year for MHCT 5-year LLB. So yeah, looking at all the 5 sections and the type of questions, pattern, and number of questions, the first slot for MHCT 5-year LLB for the year 2025 can be understood as a pretty easy paper, and we can expect a very high cutoff for this year uh, because of the pattern, or because of the pattern of or types of questions that were asked. Yeah. That is it from my side. Let's keep our fingers crossed, and let's hope for the best. I wish all the very best to all of you, to all those who have appeared for MHCT 5-year LLB this year. And let's hope for the best, and let's wait for the results. Bye bye. Take care.